It's not real music. They're not real musicians. They're just stealing other people's music. If you're Gen X, that argument should sound familiar. We heard versions of it when rap started escaping neighborhood block parties and invading mainstream radio. Now the same complaint has been repackaged for AI music. Different machine, same suspicion. And once again, the real question isn't whether technology belongs in music. It's what humans choose to do with it. Rap made people redefine what counted as an instrument. A turntable had been designed to play records. DJs used two of them to isolate breaks, extend rhythms, scratch sounds, and construct something the manufacturer never imagined. Samplers pushed that further. Pieces of recorded sound became raw material for new arrangements. The Smithsonian now describes the turntable's adaptation by early hip-hop DJs as a technological shift in how music was created. What critics dismissed as avoiding musicianship became an entirely new form of musicianship. Sampling was never as simple as pressing a button and collecting applause. Producers had to hear possibilities other people missed. They selected the fragment, altered it, placed it against a beat, and built a new context around it. That does not mean every sample was legally cleared or ethically used. Copyright disputes eventually changed how samples were licensed, but the existence of those disputes didn't prove hip-hop wasn't music. It proved that a new creative method had arrived before the old business system knew how to handle it. AI music creates a similar crisis, because it separates music making from the skills we're accustomed to seeing. The person may not play guitar, program drums, or sing the vocal. Their job can become choosing the concept, directing generations, rejecting weak results, rewriting lyrics, arranging sections, and deciding what the finished track is supposed to communicate. That doesn't automatically make every person entering a prompt a musician, but operating a guitar doesn't automatically make somebody an artist either. Tools produce sound. Judgment turns sound into a statement. This is where the stealing argument needs more precision. Generative systems learn statistical relationships from enormous collections of material. They don't simply behave like a cassette duplicator copying one album from beginning to end. But the human influence comparison isn't perfect either. A human musician hears a limited amount of music through a lifetime of memory and experience. A commercial model may be trained at industrial scale, potentially using copyrighted work without direct permission. Whether particular training practices qualify as fair use remains disputed, so there are legitimate questions about consent and compensation. Theft just isn't a complete technical explanation. The real threat isn't that a computer will suddenly become David Bowie. It's that it can manufacture enormous quantities of music that are good enough. Familiar chord progression, familiar voice, familiar emotional vocabulary. Everything arrives in the right place because the machine has learned where those pieces usually go. It can create an endless supply of songs that sound like something you almost remember. That will be useful for background music, disposable content, and anyone who needs a mood more than a message. We've already lived through a version of that. By the end of the 80s, mainstream rock had learned how to reproduce its own successful ingredients: polished production, expensive videos, enormous choruses and bands packaged into recognizable types. That doesn't mean the entire era was fake or emotionless. Plenty of great records came from inside that system, but repetition had turned a living sound into a formula. The industry kept polishing the surface while part of the audience started waiting for something that felt dangerous again. Then Nirvana arrived, sounding like the wall had cracked. Nevermind was released in September 1991, and its success carried the Seattle grunge sound into the center of popular culture. The important part wasn't that Nirvana rejected production. Nevermind was professionally produced. The difference was that the polish couldn't conceal the tension underneath it. The song sounded frustrated, vulnerable, sarcastic, and alive. Listeners weren't responding to technical imperfection for its own sake. They were responding to something the existing formula had stopped giving them. That is why AI could be good for true musicians. Here's the harsh version. If you can't make anything more meaningful than a soulless computer generating formulaic musical mad libs, then the machine may not be the problem. AI will expose how much supposedly human music was already assembled from safe decisions. Real musicians still possess the advantage the machine cannot manufacture for itself: an actual life. They can turn grief, anger, embarrassment, desire, failure, and place into choices that matter because somebody lived behind them. The musician's job has changed before. Drum machines didn't eliminate drummers, but they changed which rhythms required one. MIDI didn't eliminate performers, but it let one person control an arrangement that once required a roomful of equipment. Affordable 4-track recorders didn't destroy studios, but they allowed ideas to develop outside them. Each tool removed certain barriers and made certain routine skills less valuable. Then musicians built new skills around the tool. AI accelerates that cycle, but it doesn't invent it. Tomorrow's musician may spend less time physically producing every note and more time defining what deserves to exist. That shifts value toward taste, editing, storytelling, and identity. It also creates oceans of disposable music, because lowering the cost of creation lowers the cost of creating something nobody needed. The audience becomes the final filter. A machine can calculate the shape of a breakup song. It cannot have its stomach drop when a particular name appears on a phone screen. A human can hear the difference and decide whether the song earned that emotion. So, no, AI music doesn't make the musician obsolete. It makes imitation cheaper. That will be painful for people whose value came from reproducing a familiar formula, but useful for artists who have something the formula can't predict. If mapping these cycles helps you see the system more clearly, supporting the channel lets more of these connections keep surfacing. Rap didn't end music when it turned records into instruments. AI won't end it when it turns patterns into songs. It will force humans to prove what they were adding all along. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video and subscribe for more Gen X perspective on the patterns we keep seeing come back around. And if you want to keep going, watch the recommended video on screen now.